right, you're listening to Hawk Talk. I'm here today with Shadi Bakour. How are you, man?
Hey, doing great. How are you?
Good, good. So I imagine like you're born, you come out, and you just start yelling at people about using plastic water bottles, right? Like just immediately, you're like, "What is this? Get these out of
Screaming
here!"
at the top of my lungs.
Yeah, I assume you are probably screaming at the top of your lungs, just maybe not so coherently.
Well, the goal is to be right there on the streets with Greta Thunberg, kind of like chanting no more plastic, but
You're like,
we're still working on that. So,
nice. I'm sure you'll get there. So take me back. Where are you from originally?
originally from San Francisco Bay Area, born and raised, San Francisco Children's Hospital.
There you go. And tell me about childhood, parents. Like, what did your parents do when you were growing up?
My ethnic background, my parents are from Syria and Jordan.
Uh-huh.
They met in Northeastern University in Boston and
Nice.
made their way out west to the Silicon Valley. And so I was very blessed to have that kind of immigrant work ethic that they passed down to me. They kind of, as immigrants, like put everything into their kids. And so my goal was to be able to repay them, to bring a sense of financial security to the family. I mean, I was driven very early on by just the idea that I wanted to create a business, and kind of that entrepreneurial kick
When did that
and
start?
have
I'm curious. Like, how old were you when you first realized, like, I want to make money? And was it driven by the idea of giving back to your parents even at a young age?
Yeah, absolutely. From a very early age, it was always driven by just kind of wanting to build myself. Coming out of college, I studied finance, and so I wanted to work in Wall Street. Never got an interview or a job or an offer or anything.
How come? What year did you graduate?
I graduated in 2013. I'm 31 years old right now. I went to a good school, but I just never got an interview for what I wanted. And so I was like, screw it. I'll just do my own thing. And had some previous startups that had some mild success, nothing crazy at all. And we are just kind of back to the drawing board on the next idea. And we saw a huge opportunity through that journey, became super passionate about the environment and how bad plastic is and all those crazy details that we're not aware of.
Before we get there, taking a step back, like, as a kid, what kind of, like, pre going to finance school and all that, what were you into as a kid? Like, were you the young hustler that was always trying to make money doing different like, side jobs? Or, like, what did you have? Were you into sports? Like,
Yeah, I had a very interesting childhood. I was pushed very hard academically as a kid. So when I was in fifth grade, I started taking community college courses for math and English and stuff like that. So I started taking algebra, in fifth grade, finished all high school math before getting into high school. Athletically, I was pushed very hard. So played a lot of soccer, played a lot of different sports, played instruments. I was a well-rounded kid.
what'd you play?
I played saxophone, trumpet, and guitar. My summers were spent like it was go read a book and then give me a one-page report on it before you can go hang out with your friends. We didn't have any TV at home. There were just certain things that I would say I'm very grateful for now, but during the time I was like, I want to go hang out with my friends, right?
Yeah,
But those experiences shaped who I am today. So
of course. And in those experiences, like, do you remember like what was the earliest inclination of like what you wanted to be when you grow up? Like, did you have thoughts of that, or were you really just focused academically on like this is the next phase so I can get to a good college and get a good job, or was it like no, I have a dream of doing X, Y, Z?
yeah, I mean, I played around with all the different professions in my mind. Did I
Yep.
want to be a doctor? Do I want to work? You know, one of the considerations is like, what's the quickest way to get as rich as possible? But I always had that kind of entrepreneurial kick, I would say. Like when I was 10 years old, the story is I was sitting in the doctor's office sick, and I just started looking at how many people, it was like flu season. So I started seeing how many people are going into the doctor's office. I asked my mom, how much does the doctor make on every visit? Calculated the revenue,
Yeah.
and then I almost became a doctor for that reason. But ultimately, that idea of like investing, business, finance, those types of things definitely interested me.
And did you ever pursue it? Like again, you found out you obviously had a head for math too. Then, if you were calculating that sitting there, so did you ever like did you have little odd jobs or side jobs while you were growing up? Did you or did were you focused academically so you didn't have the bandwidth for it?
I would say I was focused academically. When I was in high school, like it was heavy academics, and then one summer I went and trained in the Shaolin Martial Arts Temple, trained Shaolin Martial Arts when I was 13. Then for high school, I went to a military boarding high school in Indiana, in the middle of nowhere. And so those experiences, I would say, kind of took most of my energy.
How'd that come up in
Um,
terms of going to military school? Why was it just your parents like the idea of the discipline, or like how did you end up there?
Yeah, it was built around the idea of leadership. My neighbor went there, and at the time it was the most expensive school in the nation. We couldn't afford it, but the dean told us if we wait one more year, apply for the scholarship, that we would most likely get it. So got a full ride there, and that
Nice.
also allowed me to go to Spain for a summer, for example, and become fluent in Spanish and go on a mission trip to Croatia. So I was very blessed, I would say. It wasn't like a bad kid that gets
Yeah,
shipped off. I learned to ride horses, all this cool stuff.
very cool. Going to military school, did you have any interest of like joining the military from that, or was that did that not really come up?
No, it was purely leadership based, but I did kind of get my entrepreneurial start at that school. There was a new program called School for the Entrepreneur, and I was in the first year of that, my junior year, and then second year I was actually a captain for that school. During college, I also like participated in every business plan competition, every elevator pitch, like all that stuff. I was super into it.
And in high school, like what did that look like, a entrepreneurship program in high school?
It was like you build an idea of a product or something, and then you present it. So it was a cool project.
Nice. You have to write the whole business plan, all those kind of things too.
Exactly.
Got it. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And so you go to college, and you like when did this idea of like I'm gonna join Wall Street come in? Like when did that start to kind of get into your head?
During college,
Oh,
for
cool,
sure.
cool.
I had a buddy of mine, really good buddy of mine that now works at JP Morgan,
Yeah,
who was like day trading, and I see his screens and I'm like, what's going on here? And so I got really into day trading with him. So I was the kid that was known for, my notes are on half the screen and then the other half of my screen is charts of the day-to-day, stock market or just full screen stock market and no notes. So yeah, we were kind of known as those kids within the school.
nice. Which school, by the way? Where'd you go?
George Washington University
Oh,
in
cool. Yeah,
Washington, D.C.
yeah, great school. Nice. So you got into day trading, and then you're like this, and you loved it that much. You're like, this is what I'm gonna do with my career. Like I need to study this and go work for J.P. Morgan or someone.
Yeah, I had $2,000 that I had saved up that was, trading on, but the commissions were $10 each way, so you really weren't like you're already $20 down to start on a $2,000 trade. It's tough to make money, like flipping the stock market that way.
That's all. And you were mentioning like you didn't get any interviews. Like, were you trying to like were you heavily pursuing it, or like why do you feel that way? Because you went to a good school, you got a good background. Like, what was holding you back on the interview side?
Yeah, I mean, I think Wall Street is very just typical Wall Street. I mean, I've heard that I'm not the only person that experienced this. Like, they're looking for Ivy League, they're looking for a certain pedigree, and I just didn't fit into that for whatever reason. I did work in private equity for a little bit in Dubai, which was a great experience. Loved it, but I wanted to be in New York
During college or post college?
post college.
Got it. So yes,
Yeah.
you as you said, you weren't getting the attention of the firms you wanted to work at. So you graduate. Did you go straight to private equity, or what'd you do right when you graduated?
Yeah, exactly. Went to private equity, then went to work there, but ultimately left
How long were you there for?
about 8 months.
Okay, got it. And how come? What
Yeah.
did you not like about it? How come you left?
People scared me telling me that if you stay in Dubai, you're not going to be able to break into the US market. You're not going to be able to break back in. And I had a job offer from Booz Allen Hamilton, which was a good consulting firm in the US. So I thought that would be a good stepping stone for me to jump into it. But when I joined consulting, I just absolutely hated it.
What'd you hate about it?
I got a 6 month project to do this statistical, it was cost and risk analytics consultant.
Mhm.
So this cost model, and I finished it in like 5 hours on my first day. And then I don't know if I should say this, but I watched a lot of Game of Thrones. Let's just put it that way during that time. But I didn't feel challenged
Yeah.
and ultimately just said, I want to break into Wall Street. Went back to California, worked at my friend's financial services firm that she just let me into. I was going to take my certification tests 2 weeks into the job because I had felt I was ready and I was fresh out of school and all that stuff. I I asked the managing director to allow me to take the test. He said, no, it's gonna take you, you need 3 to 6 months to study before you can take that test. And and so I said, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna wait 3 to 6 months, and I quit
Nice.
and started my last startup before this one, which was a completely different
Yeah. So
concept.
so you couldn't take the test without them signing off on it. Was that part of it?
Yeah, you have to be like a
Yeah.
financial services sponsored
Got it.
firm.
Okay.
Hmm.
And they refuse to let you. So you leave. What was the startup in? Like you leave and just immediately like I'm just gonna go start my own thing, but it has nothing to do with finance.
Yeah. So I always believed uh, there's a popular book, How to Win Friends and Influence People,
Yep.
and he talks about Charles Schwab, the story of Charles Schwab, and how he went into a steel mill and he basically didn't know anything about steel, but he went in, he managed, and his whole thing is like, I don't need to know about steel, I just need to know about people, and then you can find the people to help you execute on a steel mill. So I always kind of believed in that. It was always like, doesn't matter what the idea is, if you know how to manage, you can do anything. Yeah, it was a funny story. Like we were just that next weekend, we were going up to a hike, me and my buddies, and one of us sticks our hand out of the window. He's like, my hand is cold. And so, anyways, we start brainstorming, and we were like, what if we did this thing with a hand warming iPhone case? It's Bluetooth controlled. You go, you set the temperature, and it's a titanium shell that warms up. There was a whole like technology behind it. It separated the battery from the phone, so everything was insulated perfectly. Yeah, I spent a lot of time just working on that concept, about a year and a half.
Wow. Did you like tell me more about that? Like, that's it's funny you guys just came up with on and you just went for it. Which, by the way, if you talk to any successful person, what separates them generally is they just went for it. Like, yeah, that's a good idea. And like, there's probably 50 people that when you launch this went, oh, I had that idea. Like that guy, I could have done that. It's like, but you didn't. This guy went and actually made.
Exactly.
So, did you raise money? Like, what was the path to that like?
No, we just maxed out. We had like 12K limit on a credit card. We bootstrapped the heck out of it. I was working at an Italian restaurant, Romano's Macaroni Grill, living at home with the families. That's a big blessing that I think not everyone has, and not everyone appreciates if they have it. But being able to live at home and like eat and know where you're gonna sleep without, as a safety net, I think that was definitely critical. But yeah, I mean, I didn't know how to code apps. I didn't know how to create a circuit board. I watched a million YouTube videos, and we did everything like ourselves. We didn't hire other people to do it. So I coded the app, I created the circuit board. My partner created the 3D design of the product, and we were just working like 12 hours a day every day on this concept. Launched it on Kickstarter, did pretty well at the beginning, but Kickstarter was not boosting our profile, even though we had more comments than everyone and all of this thing. So we were in San Francisco, we met with Kickstarter, like what's going on here? And basically they said it's the algorithm, like we can't do anything about it. So we're like, middle finger to you guys, we're going to Indiegogo because they weren't boosting our page.
Yeah.
So, and during that transition, I was working at this restaurant, and I was waiting more tables. Like when I was at a waiter, I was there to make money. Don't talk to me, don't do anything. Like I'm there for the tips. So I would take as many tables as I could, and that night I had taken more tables than I had ever, like by far a record by like 2 tables in the entire restaurant. I had 8 tables, which is quite complex. If you're in the restaurant business, you would know. And so I was running around like crazy. One of the tables that I was waiting that night was the owner of a large case company. So he's like, I'm buying technologies like this all the time. So basically, we kind of walked away. We made a little tiny bit of money, but we
Oh, you're
basically
saying the
walked
guy bought
away
it? You were
breaking
waiting on a
even.
table and the guy bought your company? That's awesome.
It wasn't like a company, it was a
Yeah,
technology that we had built.
I get
But
it.
yeah,
But you guys made a little bit of money and you got to work on this for a year and a half and learn how to build a business.
yeah, in my mind, it was a big win.
Yeah, and
Um,
this is not a guy you knew. This is like how did that come up when you're waiting their table?
They were just like, I've never seen someone running around as crazy as you are. And because that night I was just like, I was asking people, can you like help me out? Get me that guy a Coke, this, that. I was running around like it was mad.
Yeah.
And so they kind of, and then we just got into this conversation. It was him and his wife, and we just kind of hit it off, and it,
Nice.
it was
How long did it take
very
you from
serendipitous.
meeting him to actually selling him the technology?
It was very quick. It was just
Like,
basically we gave him all the IP. It was like 3 weeks.
and you guys did end up like with all the money and everything, like it was worth it. You guys put a little money in the bank.
Yeah, very little, but we lived the broke life, I would say, for the next 4 years
Uh-huh.
or like even 5 years.
After that, you kept
So
you grant. Well, yeah. What did you
yeah.
do after you sold that? What was next? What did you end up doing?
So we were sitting around thinking of the next idea. But for this idea, we had gone through the pain of building a product and we'd forgot about sales, marketing, raising money, all the other things that you have to do to build a business. So we're like, okay, we want to create a product that's very simple and very scalable, very impactful, but we want to be able to put it on the market like that and just kind of like scale it up, sell it, make a bunch of money. So water, everyone drinks water, right? And we were just kind of looking into different market segments, and we were at a CVS. We were looking at the water aisle, started talking about the cap, the bottle, the liquid, everything, and we just thought to put it into a metal container. Yeah, we started researching it, made a business plan. We had some aha moments along the way. We saw the trends going against plastic early on, which was in 2015, and we just started going after it.
Nice. And so, were you able to do this bootstrap? Like, how did you get the thing off the ground?
So at the beginning, we knew we needed some money. So we went and kissed as many butts as we could, basically. And we were able to find an investor. We basically like raised $74,000 to start.
How did you find that investor? How did that come to be?
It was very serendipitous. It was one of my co-founders was just had a previous relationship with him actually installing alarms at his manufacture at his facility,
Yeah.
security alarms, and he's like, "Hey, we're starting something. You want to take a look?"
Yeah.
We did a presentation with them. Yeah, they're like, "We're interested." We actually walked away from the deal because they wanted to be non-dilutive, and that was like, something that was very, we were very against it. So we walked away from it because we're like, we're not going to succeed if it's non-dilutive. And then we actually ended up going back because we forgot our stamp at their office. And then we just were like, whatever, we're just going to do it. So we took that deal. And then later on, they removed the non-dilution because they understood that the only way for the company to grow was to let go of that. That initial boost allowed us to go out, create a design, do a minimum order production quantity run of bottles, and kind of start to just put the product out there and
Well, it's
test it
when
out.
people think, there's the common like venture round, like I'm raising $1 million or $2 million to get my company started, and you raise $74,000 and we're able to get it started. Like, there's something that I think there's a lot of learning in that to be said in terms of like, yeah, you don't if you need that kind of capital to get off the ground, you probably have the wrong team or the wrong business. Unless it's again deep tech, deep research, like sure, but like most businesses shouldn't take that kind of capital to get started.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's that old adage that you kind of spend what you have. So if you have less, like you're gonna figure out a way to do it, but and spend less. Yeah, I think that's true. I think we also were like driving Uber and still working at the Italian restaurant on the weekends. And so like we were doing everything that we could to make a buck, but we were working full time on the business. And obviously we didn't pay ourselves. We didn't pay ourselves for the first 3.5 years a dollar.
Wow.
So
How would you? So you were still working at the Italian restaurant to pay the bills for
yeah,
three and a half
restaurant and
years.
Uber. Yeah, and we did some like side jobs. I had a
Yeah.
little consulting thing that popped up, like little things here and there, but generally, yeah, we also just lived very broke. Like we did not spend money. Like
Ramen diet.
we did the Burger King diet, which
There
was
you
2 for 5.
go.
We ate that for a year straight, and then I
Oh,
never ate Burger King ever
I
again.
was like, how much weight did you gain that year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the only meal I would have though, so I
Oh,
wasn't
yeah. So then you're
really
still lean.
doing
Yeah. Jeez. Had to. feel like crap though. Like I've seen Super Size Me. Like it's like you can't feel
Right.
good eating just that.
No, no. Some tacos here and there, but
In 3.5 years, were you just confident this was going somewhere? Because like to live like that, when you, I mean, you went to George Washington, you've been around some nice things too. Like you're grinding, you're eating Burger King every day for a year. Like what kept you focused and not going? You know what? I can't do this anymore. 3.5 years is a long time. A year, most people can sprint through a year and get shit done. But like 3.5 years, you still get to that point of like, what am I doing?
yeah, yeah. I would say about a year and a half to 2 years into it, I really considered whether I should stay in it, because we had negative $400 in our bank account. We had lost someone on our team, separated from the company. We were just like not sure what to do, and we were at a low point. And I'm like, to your point, like I can go get a job, be making good money, pursuing another career path, and this is not going the way that I had hoped by this point. We thought we'd have it on the market in 3 months and we would be like selling the company in 3 years, and here I am 8 years into it. Yeah, but I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change a day of it. I
What
would say that,
what
like,
kept you in it? That's the biggest question. Like, because I
yeah,
think what something I've noticed, especially the past year with the economic shifts that have happened, businesses fail for two reasons from what I see. I'm sure I'm missing something, but I'm oversimplifying. But it's either you took on a bunch of debt and someone takes over your business because you can't service it, or the founder gives up. Like, not saying that it's not rightfully gives up, but at some point you get to the point where it's just not, the person decides it's not worth it anymore because you can always go down to, you can get leaner and leaner and leaner to the point that you're the only employee and you take no salary and you're still trying to operate. Like there's opportunity to continue a business in perpetuity. Might not look the same, but you can do that. So I'm always curious about like what kept you going because most people give up. It's just fact of life.
yeah. So I would say the number one quote that drives me is Sigmund Freud. He says, "In retrospect, the years of struggle will strike you as the most beautiful." Basically, what it's saying, when you look back, the struggle is the most beautiful part of the journey. And I realized that early on. So when I was like even looking into Wall Street, like when you're working in Wall Street, the hours are insane. It's the 9 to 5, right? 9 a.m. to 5 a.m. and you're sleeping 4 hours. So when I was working in private equity, those were my hours, and I loved it. Like, because I was like, I wanted to go through that hardship because I knew that there was a pretty, grass is greener on the other side type of thing.
And so you were telling yourself that all through this, like this struggle is worth it. It's going to be worth it. I'm going to look back on this in a positive way, and I'm just going to keep struggling until this happens. That was the kind of what kept you going.
Yeah, I really enjoyed, like, I knew that I was struck, like I knew that at the beginning, like I wanted to be broke. I don't want to have a lot of money because also it just builds a story like over time, and I always look at things not over a very short period of time, but actually over a very long period of time. I wasn't in a rush to say, okay, I want to be rich in 3 years. I looked at it like I want to be rich in the next 40 years. And there's no way that if I just work my absolute hardest, that I'm not going to be rich in 40 years. It kind of takes away that time constraint,
Yep.
and it's a marathon, not a sprint. And if you think about like Warren Buffett made most of his money between 50 and 60 and beyond, right?
Yep.
A lot of people make most of their money between 50 and 60. That's kind of how I thought about it. And for me, it was always, if I fail, fine. But it's only fine if I know that I put my 110% into it. If I put 90% of my top potential into this and I fail, then I will regret it. So as long as I'm putting everything into it, if it fails, there's nothing more that I could have done.
After 3.5 years, did you end up raising money? Like that was about 2018. What ended up happening? Like what was the turning point that you went from like the Burger King diet to like okay, I can live at least a stable life at this point?
Yeah, so 2017, we raised our first $1 million. By September of 2017, we had raised it.
And how did you raise that? Had you actually gotten some distribution? Things were going well. Like what was the story behind that?
Yeah, so at that point, we had started going, the product wasn't moving in like the natural foods, like Whole Foods types of stores. So we pivoted. This is the low point when we had negative 400 in the bank account. We're like, what are we doing? We have product collecting dust. And we pivoted into 7-Eleven, and we started, the next morning we were up at 5 a.m. We went to every 7-Eleven in Northern California, and we just literally drew a map and like connected the dots, and just we would like wait in the parking lot till the store owner shows up, go in, make a deal with him at all costs, and within a month, within 30 days, we put the product in 227 Elevens in the back of a beat up Prius with the bumper hanging off, delivering 60 cases at a time, and water is very heavy, so we're like literally low riding and like scraping. That's like but that's the most beautiful part
Yeah.
is like you never have those days again,
No.
right?
Yep.
If you succeed. So that's
Okay. And so once you got in those 220 stores, you were able to raise $1 million?
And then we started going after schools. Okay, what happened to raise the money? Yes, we had some traction in 7-Eleven, but we were still trying to raise money and we couldn't get it. And so I had this idea. We had like $2,000 in the bank account at this point. We had gotten another $30,000 check from one investor, so that gave us a little tiny bit of money. But I decided to throw an investor party, and I invited everyone that we had been talking to, our advisors, our 7-Eleven owners, to this party. It was basically an open bar, and it was the last 2 grand that we had. And we brought balloons, and we brought and we basically got a group. So it was one lawyer that he's like, I have a good gut feeling. Then he made other introductions, and there was one day that we just went around to the community and collected like 20 checks, and we just lined them all up and then deposited everything, and it was close to $1 million, about 900,000. But that year I paid myself around $20,000. So and then the next year we kind of bumped it up slightly, 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 and getting closer to market now. It's been a long journey.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's been almost 9 years now. And so that was 2017. And things, did they start to take off then from the business side? Like, did you start to get more distribution? People started buying it? Like, what was the inflection point where you're like, okay, this has been worth it. This is working.
I would say the biggest inflection point was probably our Series A, which happened last year. So it's been an uphill battle for many, many years.
Yeah.
And there have been multiple times where, we've been kind of at the last string to like down to the minute.
It's what happens in business. People don't realize that, like, there are very few businesses that exist that haven't been close to death many times. The ability to have the grit to get through that. That's again, like, when I say close to death, like negative 400 in your bank account, these kind of things, but there's always something to do. Like, you could have just been
Yeah,
like, well, that's it. Like, Whole Foods didn't work. We don't have any money. Our key employee just quit. I'm out. Like, there's nothing else to do. And instead,
yep,
you loaded up your car and put water in the trunk and drove to 7-Eleven to sell them. Like, and if that didn't work, you try another type of store and you try selling them out of your trunk to
exactly.
individuals. Like, it's like there's always that thing. So, yeah, people don't realize that. So, and am I wrong? You raised a big round in like 4 years, or like in 2019 too, or something, right?
Yes. In 2019, we also raised a round. The story behind that is a little bit interesting too. So up to that point, we wouldn't be able to afford a booth at a trade show. So we would just go into the trade shows, walk around, scope out like different buyers, different investors, whoever we wanted to network with, and then like go after them, go talk to them, present the product, walk with them down the aisle at the trade show. In 2019, we took the go big or go home attitude because we had raised a solid round, about 8.5 million. And so it was go big or go home. And we went to the largest food and beverage trade show. We did it really big. We had a 25-foot inflatable, PATHWATER bottle in the middle of the plaza. We had Guy Fieri there. We had Vernon Davis, like handing out product. Everything was branded. So that put us on the map. And we got approached by one of the biggest legends, I won't say his name, in the food and beverage industry. He had one of the biggest acquisitions in food. He invited us out to visit him, based in New York. Visited him many times, but ultimately could not come to a deal, and he wanted to take our whole Series A. And so we decided, okay, we have to walk away from that. And we went through this dry streak for several months where we couldn't raise any capital. To your point, like you get to, you red line and you get to those points where it's very scary and you're not be able to raise. And then after that, we met someone and like boom, you break through that ceiling and we're able to fill the whole round. So
What you end up raising last year?
last year we raised 30 million from Altos Ventures, and that's our first institutional round. So everything before this has been non-institutional, and we basically
Who invested the 8.5? in 2019?
It was a group of high net worth individuals, celebrities, athletes. That's when Ryan Seacrest came on board. I mean, I can name drop Shane Battier, Kevin Houvain.
I asked. You're allowed to name drop when you get asked.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, Steve Lockshin, who joined
that's
our board, and is a legend within the financial services industry and just startups and disruption.
I don't know what you're sharing now, but like give me an idea of size now. Like how much revenue or how many cases? Like how big are you guys at this point?
Yeah, I mean, we're on our way to 100 million over the next 12 to 24 months, I would say. And we've been doubling the business or more every year. It's a healthy growth, just trying to lay the foundations now to take us to a billion.
So that's the goal of billion. I was going to say, so what's next? Like, what is that sort of, lack of a better word, what is the path to a billion? What does that look like?
Yeah, pun intended. So our main objective right now is just to really focus on continuing to build a healthy business. So we've brought on a CFO, director of supply chain, PR and communications, just across the board in the business. We've filled some key roles that will just help us kind of bring a lot of experience and know-how to the table. And then from there, we'll be able to put in the processes that we need to scale. And at that point, once you put in those processes, it's just putting fuel to the fire and continuing to grow like crazy. So the opportunity is there. Like it's sustainability, and I always say sustainability is not a trend. So it's not like coconut water, for example, or one of these other beverage trends. Honestly, that people will like for a period of 4 years or 6 years or whatever it may be, and then it kind of dies away. We had the kombucha fad, which, kombucha is still very present, but you kind of have these different moving trends, but sustainability is here for the long run. It's getting increasingly worse every day, so we're not like moving in the right direction, but we gotta do what we can to get there.
Wise words. And so, last question for me: for someone else trying to pursue their dream or make something happen, and you had some great quotes today, but I'm curious, what would be like the one piece of advice you either wish you got or you did get that really helped you go in to pursue that dream?
I would say the number one thing for me that we did well from an early stage is we just talk to as many people as you can. There are so many ideas. You might have the best idea in the world, but in my mind, like I have a whole list of ideas, right? It's not about the idea, it's about you executing on that idea. And one form of capital or one form of resources is human resources. So talk to as many people as you can, get the idea out there, and then go execute on it.
Love it. Well, Shadi, this has been awesome. Thank you for coming on Hawk Talk.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.